I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever had something fall in your lap that had no business being there, either bad or good? I'm sure you can all remember a situation, maybe you're still dealing with some now, something bad that just was dropped on you, like, really? I have to deal with this? This is not my stuff. But how much more unusual is it when something good happens to you that didn't originate from you, that had nothing to do with you, it's one of God's blessings just in your lap, and you're like, wow, what am I to do with this? I don't deserve this. How do I process this? Has this ever happened to you? This happened to a member of our church recently by the name of Eric Klein. Eric and Michelle said gave me permission to share this story with you. And Eric joined one of these clubs that brand new that started just recently that helps other people, called 100 Men Who Care. Have anyone heard of that? Or there's a companion, 100 Women Who Care. Basically what they do is they get together, 100 plus men get together, and it's a social club, and they have a philanthropist attitude. They all write checks for $100 a piece. And then they put their cards, their business cards, in a fishbowl. They pick out 3 of those cards. Those 3 men get to give a pitch for a charity or something, a cause that they believe in, and they vote on it. And at the end of that meeting, every month, they give away all that money to that charity. Now let me do some math for you. 100 men times $100 a man is roughly $10,000. This is a lot of money. If you got more men, you got more money. Say yes? We were told we wouldn't do math in church. Sorry. I did it for you. 100 Men Who Care. So Eric goes for the first time to this meeting. He's a first timer, and of course, when he finds out what I just told you about how things happen, he's praying probably that his card doesn't get selected, because he has nothing to talk about. And so sure enough, he puts his card in, and they fish around, they pick out 3 cards, and he's one of them. Now what do you do? Well, Eric would remember just a few weeks ago that his wife, Michelle, also a member here at First Lutheran, got really, really excited about our Operation Backpack. Have you guys heard of this? So we voted on, at the beginning of the year, what can we do for social outreach? What can we do for social justice? And you all said, let's get involved in food backpacks for kids in the area. It's a growing, rising program where area schools around us here in Cedar Rapids have these low-income kids that come and they get a hot meal for breakfast, often they get a hot meal for lunch, but then they go home and they are hungry on the weekends. This is a reality in our community, is it not? Say yes. 1 out of 6 children in our community are hungry on the weekend and throughout the summer. So they developed this program where churches and charities can pack backpacks full of food and nutritious and easy to cook meals, because oftentimes these kids either have a single mom or they have no mom because she's out working on the weekends. And they can prepare it themselves, and they put it discreetly in their backpack so that the other kids don't pick on them, and they go home and they have this food on the weekend. Well, Haycap Food Reservoir came to our hunger team and said, this would be a great project for First Lutheran to do. We have a whole new school, Hoover Elementary, and we think there might be 20 to 30 kids in need there, but you've got a big church, you could really handle a program like this. And so the head of our hunger team, Diane Selk, I don't know if any of you know Diane Selk, she's like a halo short of a saint, this woman. Like many of you, a tireless worker for Christ's kingdom. And Diane says, let's take it on, let's do it. And so they run some numbers and they ask the school counselors how many kids are in need at Hoover, and they realize there's 120. Right? What do we do now? Diane says, let's go for it. Let's go for it. Let's step out in faith. And so she runs some numbers, and we figure out $220 per kid per year, whatever. It comes out to $32,000 a year to run this program at Hoover. We don't have that kind of money. We budget everything, and by the way, this isn't a sermon I'm asking you for money, okay? That comes a couple weeks later, right? So breathe easy. We don't have that kind of money. It's all budgeted and tied up. But Haycap says, don't worry, we'll figure something out. Diane says, don't worry, we'll figure something out. Diane figured out our portion of it, what we'd like to give half, would be $16,000. Are you all with me? $16,000, our half of this program. So we start running it. So she gets wind of it. Diane gets excited, gets her friend Michelle Klein excited. Michelle goes home and tells her husband Eric, and Eric goes to this 100 Men Who Care. And his card gets pulled out, and he says, I've got one. My church is doing a great food backpack program, and he stands up and he pitches it, and the guys all get together and grumble and talk, and they come back and they said, Eric, you've won. We're going to give it to your church. And I'm not kidding you. This Friday, take a look at this picture. This Friday, they showed up with a check for $16,000. Come on. How good is God? Now hear me clearly, I'm not a prosperity gospel preacher, like some of those you see on TV that if you pray hard enough or you have enough faith, God will make you rich or prosper you. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the kids were in need, the HACAP had a thing, First Lutheran, Eric Klein, all of it kind of came together. Do you see that? Do you see that? Yeah. And Eric Klein didn't originate this idea, it fell on his lap. It was a blessing that came to him. What am I to do with this? Well, when it comes to you, you act. You reach out to others in the name of Christ. What does it have to do with today? Well, this is exactly what happens in today's gospel. Jesus goes to the religious leaders who are screwing up the church something royal, the chief priests and the Pharisees, and he tells them an allegory, a story about how that church is going to be taken from them and given inherited to someone else. And that someone else, by the way, is you all. And so Jesus says to the religious leaders, let me tell you a story. There's a landowner. It's God. I'll let you in on the secret. Jesus says there's a landowner and he has tenants. The tenants are the original chief priests and Pharisees of the church. They're running the church. So Jesus says there's a landowner and there's tenants, you all, and you're misbehaving. And so this landowner, this God, sends people to the tenants and says, fix your ways. This could be seen as the prophets God sends into the world, all the people, all the checks, the balances. Fix your ways, and they don't. The tenants reject all those people. So the landowner, God, sends the chief priests and the Pharisees, his son. Surely they won't reject my son, Jesus, but they do. And so Jesus asked the very people who are going to reject him, what do you think a God, a landowner, should do to these tenants? And they damn themselves by saying, well, that landowner should rip power away from him and give it to somebody else who's going to bear fruit. And that's exactly what happens. Amen. The power and the control is taken from those corrupt leaders who think that the religion is all about them, who think eternal life is all about them, and who can follow their rules. And Jesus says, and he hands it to the whole world, both Jews and Gentiles. The whole world, you all, inhabited. So the question for you is, with this thing that's fallen into your lap that you've inherited, what are you going to do with it? I think the danger for us is to act just like the Pharisees and hold on to it. And say, well, this is all for me. This is for me and for my well-being and my family. No, God calls us to give it away. And boy, did we see that this weekend, the past 2 weeks with our adult coat drive. Some of you involved in this. We had probably close to 100 volunteers in church. We asked for, this is another mission that you want to do, to give out adult coats to those in need. Here's Natalie Wicks, our 7th grader, who chaired the task force. Just awesome victory for Natalie and her young leadership. And you donated over 500 coats. And that led me to my knees, and I prayed, oh dear Jesus, send people to take all these coats. And I may have texted Tiffany O'Donnell at CBS too. And she says, yeah, I'll put some on the news. And all these people showed up. 250 yesterday morning, and they all took a warm coat home with them. Was that not awesome to be a part of, you who saw it? And one coat in particular was this orange and white Columbia jacket. And it belonged to Natalie's brother Samuel. I think they took it against his will and threw it on file. Sorry, Samuel. And I asked their mom, Sarah, about this coat, because it really, it stands out among that pile, doesn't it? It's obvious. I said, what's the deal on this coat? And Sarah said, I like to keep all the hand-me-downs for the next boy down the line, William. Did any of you do this or have done this in your life? Oh, yeah. We've got clothes our 5-year-old's growing out of, our 1-year-old is eyeballing right now. So that's what she likes to do. So she hung on to this coat even though Samuel outgrew it. It's a nice Columbia jacket, very warm, very nice looking, very cool. And when she heard that we were doing this coat drive, and she had inherited this ministry through her daughter. She felt obliged to give it. So she went down to that closet and put it on the table and donated it. And wouldn't you know, one of the first young men who came through the doors yesterday morning went and picked up that coat, put it on his shoulders, and as God would have it, it was Natalie who was helping that individual. And he says, "What can you tell me about this coat?" And Natalie says, "That's a good coat. That's a good coat. It'll keep you warm. It's a Columbia jacket. It's a nice jacket." And the young man put it on. He says, "This feels good. This feels good." Friends, we're called to give away that which we've inherited. And it's not only material things. Yes, God is calling you to think about stretching you financially. God is calling you to think about giving away some material things. But God is also calling all of us to give away the kingdom, to give away spiritual things, to give away eternal things. This salvation through Christ isn't just for us or the faithful few, but this salvation in Christ is for the whole world.